Welcome back to What Arty Noobs with General Disturbance. This is an SU-14-2. It's the Tier 8 Soviet SPG. It's located on the north spawn of Fisherman's Bay and it's under the command of ProvoBob. And thankfully he's finally managed to get a game without any bots in it. Yes, normally on the Australian and New Zealand server, and that's why there's a kangaroo on the side of the vehicle, you get a lot of bots at certain times of night because there's just not enough players. Wargaming had to put the bots in, otherwise they just wouldn't be able to service those players at all. They wouldn't be able to get any games, so they decided to put bots in instead. Well, the SU-14-2, there's only two of them ever existed, and the only one still remaining is actually located at the Russian Tank Museum at Kubinka, and that's exactly where this Arty fired from when it was attacking the Germans during the Second World War on their approach to Moscow. Now, as many of you know, I've actually been to Moscow quite a few times, and although I've never been to Kubinka, I've seen the spot where the Germans managed to reach close to the town centre. It really was close, it's no joke. They were very, very close to the town centre, and they almost took Moscow. In fact, they did say that Stalin had a train ready to leave at a moment's notice if he decided that, yep, it was going to fall. I mean, he was resident in the Kremlin, which is right in the centre of Moscow. It's a huge palace, it's massive. People underestimate the size of that place, but it is. It's lots and lots of buildings and even some churches in there as well. But the Kremlin is quite a big place, and I've actually been around the Kremlin as well, seen all the people who are buried by the Kremlin. On one corner they've got the tomb of the unknown soldier, which of course with the eternal flame and guards guarding it all night long, even in the coldest of winter. And if you go a little further around the Kremlin wall, where a lot of the Soviet heroes were buried, including some of their top people, such as the generals, and of course Yuri Gagarin was buried in the wall on the Kremlin, and of course the people who were all involved with the cosmonaut program, or the people who actually Korolev, who came up with the rockets, the mighty integral as the Americans called him, the guy who actually really made the Soviets the first into space. They're all buried in the wall, but oh, that was the direct hit, that one. But the thing about that I found most amazing, considering this was long after the Soviet Union had actually fallen, was that when I saw the grave of Stalin, it was the only grave outside the Kremlin walls which was freshly decorated with flowers, huge garlands of flowers all around his grave. And apparently I was told that yes, he is still revered by a lot of people in Russia as their saviour, despite the number of people that he hurt in his purges and the Great Terror. Of course, if you know about the Great Terror, you know about the fact that huge numbers of people disappeared in the middle of the night, accused by their neighbours of being traitors. They would just be whisked off, shot and disposed of. It really was absolutely dreadful. And people were in fear of their lives because they didn't know if they were going to die imminently. And there's me talking about something like this at this moment. Well, I'm afraid there is a possibility that that sort of thing might happen again. You never know. So you have to be aware of something like that to avoid it happening again. Anyway, enough of that bit of history. The SU-14-2, well, he's got the big gun, the 203mm howitzer, which is capable of doing 1050 alpha and penetrating 52mm of armour with a burst radius of just under 11 meters. And he's got a reload time of 33.84 seconds on this one. So he's obviously got a rammer and a good crew. The normal reload time on this one is over 40 seconds. It's a huge reload on this one, but then it is a big shell. It's 2-part ammunition, so you would expect it to be quite a hefty loading job. Plus, of course, the SU-14-2 had a cabin built around the crew. It's basically an SU-14-1 with an extra cabin and a radio, but they had the cabin built around the crew to actually protect them from small arms fire. And given how close the Germans were to the centre of Moscow, you'd need that cabin to protect against the bullets that were coming in, the 9mm bullets and the rifle bullets. That's a good hit, even though it's only 190 hit points. It's forcing that IS-22 to pull back. And yes, the Germans were incredibly close. The Soviets built a monument in the middle of the highway which leads out of the western side of the city, if you're going west, and it's not that far from the town centre. It really is very close to the ring road, right in the centre of town. And so you really get an impression of how close the Germans were to taking Moscow. And if Moscow had fallen, then many other cities would have fallen as well. And the Germans might have then been able to carve up the rest of Russia bit by bit, especially if the Japanese had invaded from the east. And of course, Russia didn't declare war on the Japanese when the Japanese declared war on everyone else. It was only right at the end of the war that Stalin saw the benefit of actually declaring war and seizing territory that belonged to Japan. And they've still got some of that territory, even though the Japanese would like it returned. Well, the battle's going well for ProvoBob so far, because he's managed to get over 2k of damage while I've been waffling on about Soviet Russia and the invasion of Moscow. Fisherman's Bay is one of those maps where it really does or can pay if you are very, very busy on hitting as many enemies as you can and position yourself well enough. He's got a nice little position here, which means he can shoot straight down this row of houses. Although it is a fairly exposed position because he's fairly near to the houses. It also means that if he does have to retreat, he wouldn't have far to go. It is a very slow Arty to move about, based on the T-35 tank, which is a very, very, well, it was a bad tank. It's not a very well engineered tank, the T-35. It was one of those multi-turret tanks, and the Soviets thought at the time, as did the British, that if you had a big tank with lots and lots of turrets, then you could engage lots of targets all at the same time, and I'm afraid it doesn't work that way. Nice try to snapshot that Progetto, didn't work. He was within a splash kill amount, but unfortunately he did survive that, and now that means they're still holding that corner of the map. Over on this side we've got an ISU-152K, which is the new premium Soviet tank destroyer that they put in the loot boxes at Christmas. I don't think they had a lot of success selling that tank to ordinary people prior to Christmas, so they decided, oh, we'll just stick it into the loot boxes and that way we'll sell it. Well, that one's dead, and ProvoBob's got another, well, his first kill actually. He's already up now to 2.6k of damage, and my mods are showing that's a purple amount, so he's probably in the Super Unicum standard already, and it's very much looking as if their team's going to win. They're 2 tanks up on the enemy, and they are, well, about par on hit points, but I think it's down to the actual tanks that they still have alive. Some of those tanks are good enough to give us the victory. It's a tier 8 game, only tier 8 tanks in it. But I think, yes, the saying win chance now is 61%. I think they've estimated the abilities of some of the players still alive on ProvoBob's team and decided, yep, he does have a pretty good chance of surviving. And unfortunately, we just lost the ELC M90, who did a rather foolish thing. Drove into that area rather quickly and suddenly found a GSOR 1008 and got wiped out. But in fact, now we're 2 tanks down on the enemy and the win chances dropped to 52%. So they're now thinking that this is going to be a loss. I don't think so. I think this one is still on course. He's fired a blind shot into that corner. He's only got 1 round left, so he does need to be careful. In fact, actually, I'm not so sure we're going to get a loss, but I think it might be a draw because he's only got 1 round left after all of that shooting. You don't get a whole lot of ammunition. It's only 16 rounds is all you carry. So you have to make the best use of it, but I think he's going to wait to pick his target for the next one to make sure that it's truly beneficial, because after that he won't be any use except as a capper. And you can see he's had quite a few aces on that vehicle. He's got the marks of distinction on the rear of his vehicle. I always say put them on the rear, don't put them on the front. If you put them on the front, then it tells the enemy that's the target you need to take down. If you put them on the back, then it helps your teammates, gives them confidence that yes, you are actually quite good, and therefore there's a good likelihood you are going to do some good for them. Oh dear, this is looking very bad now. I think they've had obviously they've had some problem, because their team are now just falling apart, and there's the last shot on the Object 274A, and he did get some splash damage of 335 hit points, so his total damage for the game is just under 3k. But with 3 minutes 30 seconds left on the clock, he's now out of ammo and the enemy is getting closer. So he is going down near to the water, but he's not going there to drown himself like ordinary tank players do in their arties. No, ProvoBob's actually a very smart player. He's actually going to position himself in such a way that either the enemy will go straight past him without actually seeing where he is, or he will then try and get past them and head south to try and spot the enemy and or get closer to their cap. Now, I think he's thought that corner will be a good place to hide in. I'm not sure it is actually, because the water's fairly deep on that corner. He was thinking about going right onto the edge of that rock. I'm not so sure this is a good idea though. He's now all alone, and well, the enemy might know he's down in this area. It is looking now, it's like it is going to be a loss. I was so confident they were going to win, and now, has he been seen? Yes, he has. He's all alone. He's been seen. The enemy are now going to home in on him. Maybe it would have been a better idea for him to sit in that tree and in those bushes next to the rock, and then he wouldn't have been seen and they would have driven past. But no, I'm afraid he has been destroyed, and that is the end of the game. And here's the end of battle results, and I'm afraid, yes, it was a defeat in this one, but ProvoBob managed to get a first-class tanker in this game. He also got a Bruiser medal for getting at least 5 critical hits. He got 21, a Gauze medal for doing more damage and exceeding 8 times the hit points for his own vehicle, the High Caliber for dealing the most damage in the game overall, and he also got a Confederate for hitting at least 6 enemy tanks that his team took down. And his win rate from the game was 5,301, Super Unicum standard by far, but I'm afraid it wasn't enough to save them for the game. You can see he did hit a lot of targets. You have to scroll the page to see all of them. Oh, it was going so well, and then it went all pear-shaped when his team fell apart. Yes, ProvoBob was the only one on his team who actually managed to get medals. In fact, he was the only one in the battle who managed to get medals. He got 4,677 hit points of damage. The next high scorer being the Progetto 4060. He tried to splash kill, who got 3,079 hit points, followed by their 703 version 2, got 2,646 hit points of damage. When it came to kills, it was the SU-14-2 on his own team and the GSOR 1008 on the enemy team. Both got 4 kills apiece. 3 kills went to the Lorraine 155-51. ProvoBob only got the 1 kill in the game, the solitary kill, I'm afraid. But when it came to base XP, it was the enemy who did the best with, yes, Progetto 46 getting 1117, the Samur SM getting 1107, and their 7032 getting 1067. And, well, there are another 2 players that were ahead of ProvoBob, so he's actually in 6th place with 725 base experience points out of that game, but it's still the top of his team and nearly twice as much as his next teammate did. 16 shots fired, all the ammo in his magazine, 5 direct hits on the enemy, no penetrations but 16 splash, so every shot did splash the enemy or do some damage on the enemy. 4,677 hit points of damage, all of it done at more than 300 meters. He received 1 hit, it was a penetration, that was from Lorraine, took him out of the game altogether right at the end. 11 enemy vehicles were damaged, 1 was destroyed, and 1,136 hit points of stun assist of 15 stuns. On a premium count, he earned 60,030 credits from the game, got 26,914 from Holiday Ops, 5,615 for Courageous Resistance. That's because he got both an Epic and a Battle Hero medal in this game, but sadly it was a loss. 92,559 credits altogether, and after repair, ammunition, resupply and consumables, he still made a profit of 33,191 credits overall. He got 30 bonds from that game, and he also picked up 1,087 XP, 610 for Courageous Resistance, and took away 1,698 altogether. So it was looking very good at one point. They were well up on the enemy. They were moving south through the town, and then they all fell apart. I think they lost the key player on their own team, and from that point on, the other players just couldn't pick up the slack, and the enemy was able to fend off the thrust south. And of course then they also made that horrendous error over on the west side of the map where that ELC just drove straight down and right into the view of a GSOR who took him out of the game very easily. That ELC, I think he wanted to get at the enemy Arty, thought that he could drive south with impunity, and of course he couldn't because there was enemy waiting for him. So ProvoBob did well, even if his team didn't. He certainly put the effort in, but it sadly ended up with a loss. If you enjoyed that replay, please give this video a like, do subscribe to our channel, leave a comment down below because it feeds the algorithms, and thank you for watching.